Welcome to a very festive episode of Standard Deviation Podcast.
At least half of us are festive.
I think I'm festive for both of us right now with this. It's not for
Yeah, but
every.
no, but you actually look like you ran into a crime scene with those police lights. it's I'm not sure if that's festive. It looks kind of like brutal, like some assault happened. And well, that's Christmas in Romania, right? Like
Exactly.
police cars everywhere. I know.
You're lucky I closed my window because you would have heard it. But at least I
Yeah,
have look the Christmas Starbucks cup, so
that's true.
I have
That's true.
something. I have something.
That's
Shouts to
very festive.
Starbucks
That's
if they
very
listen to
festive.
this. Yes, we are here, Simo, in the last episode of 2023 of Standard Deviation Podcast. Probably episode 16 or 15. It depends. We'll see at the
Who
end.
knows?
I'll edit this afterwards. So, how do you feel, Simo, after a full year of talking to all the smart people?
Yeah, I feel good. It's been a good year. We've had some really cool guests. A lot of crazy stuff going on in our industry. Always kind of fun things to talk about. Also very exhausted.
Yeah,
Like
I know,
not
right?
not from the podcast, but just from this year. Like this is. I guess many people share this sentiment that for some reason, when the year's about to end, we tend to get pretty exhausted. So
Yeah.
but it also means that, like, if you're exhausted at the end of the year, it means that you've actually done something. So I'm kind of happy about that as well. But yeah, I'm really looking forward to a small break over the
Oh, yeah, me too.
Christmas holidays.
I took a vacation first time this year for 3 weeks. I'm not
Ooh,
gonna
nice,
I'm not gonna do anything because people were like, "Oh, where are you going?" Nowhere. Just want to stay
nice
with my kids and bake
staycation.
cookies, staycation
Yeah,
and bake cookies.
yeah.
Actually, let's talk about, you would be, do you know which was our most listened to episode
What
overall?
was it?
Have you been ever curious? Actually, the most downloaded episode we had so far, when I'm looking at this right now, I'm not gonna tell people the dates because I don't speak about that. So today, the most downloaded episode it's Mbap, the marketing mix modeling episode with Mr. Jim Janolio.
Well
Yeah,
deserved.
well deserved, right? Like you wouldn't know. And then the second one was the episode that we had with Julius Fedorovicius, and then the third one was the one with Talia Wolf, Truth Bombs. Very very unexpected, right? Like I didn't know it's gonna be like this, but this is our top three episodes for this year. And thank you, all of you guys, for coming and dropping and blessing us with downloads and likes. Almost at 10,000 downloads for this year, Simo.
That's pretty cool.
I know
That is
because
very
we,
cool.
we we suck at promoting this podcast. I've been told like I'm getting pitched a lot about not putting the podcast out there that much. So people were like, "Why are you not promoting the podcast that much?" Because I'm
Yeah,
fucking busy. That's why.
yeah. Marketing is difficult. Like, especially when you market your own stuff.
Yeah, it's hard. It's hard.
Yeah, yeah.
So I was thinking because next year we're still doing this together. Next year, I hope. At this moment,
We'll see. We'll
we'll
see what
see
happens today. Like
today.
those Christmas lights are almost like putting me off, but yeah,
I'll take
we'll
them
see,
off if you want.
and we'll see what happens with our guest, because he's a known troublemaker, and if he kind of if he starts stirring some stuff up, we're just not going to come back next year. We're just gonna we're gonna close shop.
To be
He
discussed
could
then.
do that. Yeah, he could do that.
Then maybe you and him can do the podcast.
Yeah, that would be horrible. That would be like my worst nightmare. But he's a
Cool.
nice guest. Anyway,
He's a sweetheart. But I actually cannot unsee the police cars. I might have to unplug this stuff right now. Because now I cannot unsee it. Hold up. Let me. I cannot unplug them. Yes, this is good television, everyone. Okay. So, Simo, before we just talk to our distinguished guest, I want to talk a bit about technical marketing. I know you have something coming on right now from Seymour, but I had an interesting conversation with Timo Deschau, that was also a guest in our podcast, that was talking about technical marketing with him earlier. And he asked me, what does technical marketing mean for you? And I'm actually thinking a lot about that because everyone has their own definition about technical marketing. And I want to hear a lot about what you have to say because you're building this huge ass one-on-one course for people
mm,
that want to acquire these technical skills and do a better job in their marketing field. But I was thinking, like, the only reason I identify myself today as a technical marketer is because you started this whole technical marketing conversation. And it's not me
Mm,
kissing your ass right now because I want you to still do the podcast with me, or maybe. But no, seriously, I think, in my opinion, and I see this a lot with the people that listen to the podcast, that comment, that are kind enough to like engage with us, is that the technical marketer is somebody that stays in the middle of product, in the middle of development and data and marketing and sales, and is able to clearly and fluently communicate all these teams, understand the information, and is able to build strategies, build different tactics that they can improve their products, improve their jobs and their revenue and so on. So that's how I identify myself, like somebody that can speak with a data scientist, with a developer, with somebody from UX, with SEO, be able to have a fluent
mm.
conversation and still do what I do. So what is technical? Like, because you started this shit. Like,
Yeah.
so
Well,
what is it?
we're trying to figure that out. I mean, the very first chapter in the technical marketing handbook is going to be like, what is technical marketing? And I don't think we've pinned it down yet.
Yeah.
So, like, so for me, everything started when I started thinking, what is a non-technical marketer? Because that's something that people tend to be kind of proud about. I'm a non-technical marketer, so I don't do this stuff.
Yeah.
And then I started looking at what don't they do when they say they're non-technical. So things like coding, um, optimizing content for certain types of HTTP requests, optimizing networks, cloud engineering, data engineering. So it kind of, if I had to pin it down, like the description you gave about this kind of universal translator between all these different, I think that's more like for any digital marketer that they should be in that position, because digital marketing itself is like a horizontal discipline. You need to know the product, you need to know your audiences, you need to know your company, you need to know your sales strategies, everything. So I would like for anybody who calls themselves a digital marketer, I would like for them to be that person and not just a technical marketer. But the person who would say that they're a technical marketer would probably be the one who goes deeper into things that tools themselves don't do for you, because there are no code solutions out there. There are applications built on cloud stacks, so you don't actually have to do any cloud engineering, but you're still working with it. And I think that a technical marketer is more about your ambition in how you are interested in knowing what happens under the hood, what happens under those abstractions. So I think it's more like a mindset in your approach. Just as an example, like instead of learning SQL and running queries in BigQuery, you use a query builder or like an analytics interface like GA4 even, or anything that does the querying for you under the hood. Or instead of building a server-side tagging pipeline, you click the auto provisioning option in the GTM UI and have it build the pipeline for you. So there, I think, is the difference. If you're a kind of not the most technical marketer, or just a digital marketer, you would be happy with those solutions. But as a technical marketer, I think you're more interested in diving beneath those abstractions and working with the actual. But it's just a totally arbitrary label in the end. Like, this is just semantics, and when we,
Yeah.
especially in marketing and content creation, like, people love creating labels and
Mm.
debating them endlessly. And I think that for us at Simmer, it was a conscious way to carve a niche for us, because we don't want to do like marketing content for digital marketing. We don't want to do that, because then we would be doing like, this is a GA4 for beginners. This is, Data Studio for beginners, something like that. We want to go deep diving into the technical stuff. And then it's, for some content, it's very easy to say that this is technical.
Yeah.
JavaScript for digital marketers, that's obviously a technical course because you're coding. Um, but for other content, it's not going to be that clear and that easy to say. So yeah, it's a fun topic to talk about, but ultimately there is no there is no resolution. Like, anybody can choose whatever they want. But with the handbook that we're building, we are trying to not take ownership of the term, but maybe make it very, very clear what we mean with that. And hopefully, in the future, when people think about technical marketing, they'll think about what Simmer thinks about technical marketing. That will have an opportunity to normalize that term in some way. I think that's what we're going for here. But who knows?
But
It's a
that's very important because I think, in a way, once this whole technical marketing thing started with the mini degree that you did like years ago, it's just, I think a lot of people that were like in a purgatory between, actually, like, I do enjoy actual digital marketing stuff like content, like SEO, like keyword research. I love
mm,
all this stuff, but I also don't shy away to dig deep into something if I'm curious. Like, I have no problems, like rolling up my sleeves and figure out how Firebase A/B
yeah,
testing works, or figure out how to use,
yeah,
cloud functions. But it's like it's very hard for people that are in between these two worlds to find some sort of like, and it's like, I think this labeling thing, it's our, our human, nature, because we want to belong to a group because we're stronger in groups.
mm,
This is like our evolutionary behavior trait, that we're stronger in a pack, right?
mm,
So I think having this technical marketing, I don't know if it's a label, but maybe like this community, it's increasingly big. Like, look at, there's people like Timo, like those guys from Germany, Philip, and I cannot say his last name, but there's a lot of people that do technical marketing, like are in between these two worlds, and they need more support, I think, in the terms of promoting this. Like,
mm,
it's something that, for me, when I took the mini degree, I really found like, this is okay. I was like, okay, this is somewhere I can be and like I'm
yeah,
comfortable with. So there's a lot of people in digital marketing and analytics that just don't know exactly where they belong. So that's why I
yeah,
wanted to talk about technical marketing. So, like, one of the main traits that you mentioned is curiosity, right? Like, you're
yeah.
constantly curious of what's going on under the hood. Like, what are some other traits somebody that can call themselves a technical marketer can have, like, for people that are listening?
Well, I think that one, actually, now that I think about it, one, it might not, like, it might not cover all of it, but I think the one quality of technical marketing, the way that I think it, is that you work with technologies with which you can create a lot of damage. So it's not just about waving your hands,
I
because a lot
love
of
that.
digital marketing, like a lot of digital marketing, is about innovating and creating and generating ideas and writing briefs and reports, and maybe using some third party tool for building campaigns. But those tools have like built in prevention mechanisms that you can't cause too much damage with. Whereas if you jump into a cloud interface and start putting up a crazy amount of virtual machines, accidentally putting a zero at the end when you choose how many instances you need, you're going to rack up a huge bill and kill your
Of one
budget.
tap. Yeah.
Or you go into DNS and you accidentally remove your main records from your website and your website no longer works. Or you write some JavaScript that breaks your site. You're working with technologies that don't necessarily have these like prevention mechanisms. So I
Mm.
think that's one where I think that when you think about technical marketing, but then there are things like working with CSS selectors or working with browser tracking prevention mechanisms that we have at Simmer. Those aren't that kind. Like you can't. Well, you can break stuff with CSS, but those
You
are
can.
more. Yeah, but those aren't similar in that way. Like
Yeah,
they're
of
not
course.
actually tools of destruction. But
You can fix it, yeah, the selector
yeah,
afterwards if you messed
yeah,
it up.
yeah, for sure. So I think that it's just like working with components and working with constituent pieces rather than some turnkey do everything through one interface kind of things. But it's again, I just really want to emphasize that this is just one type of interpretation for two very vague terms, and I'm not gonna I'm not gonna stuff my interpretation down people's throats. I want people to make up their own mind. But this is one of the reasons why we are writing the handbook, is that we want to you know formalize our approach, but never ever make the claim that it's supposed to be the correct approach.
No, for sure, and it's your experience, right? And it's like
Yeah.
what you see in and built, and also, like, I think for Simmer is you guys have access to so many students that share their thoughts
Mm.
about different things. So I think that can be super, like, helpful for you guys to have like an idea of what expectations are from your students and how do you respond to them. I know you don't like feedback.
Yeah, exactly. I was just going to say that you're forgetting the fact that I don't
I
listen
don't,
to anyone. So
but I
it's
think
great to
Mari
it's
is
yeah. So it's great that we have like 3,000 students, but I don't like listen to any of them. No, no, no. It's
3,000.
like
That's insane.
like if we get feedback, of course it will be handled appropriately by our customer support function, and our R&D department. So we're definitely taking it all in stride. Just as a caveat, because my wife is going to kill me if I keep doing this self-deprecation stuff.
No, but you can see based on the content that also you guys are producing. But I'm thinking like if we look back at this year, like I think the role of the technical marketer, be it the interpretation we have or other people have, is that you don't really have any choice but
Yeah.
being a technical marketer, even if you're like right now just like doing, I don't know, you're the head of content, or you're a content manager, or you're doing ads, or whatever you're doing, you have no choice because I, I don't want to be, and I'm not one of those people that's gonna say AI is gonna take your job, but AI can really take your job in the sense of that, like shit is moving extremely fast. So if people would invest right now in building the technical skills required to use artificial intelligence, and when I say artificial intelligence, I don't mean ChatGPT. Just for the record, I've been trying to say that for a long time, but the access right now to artificial intelligence and machine learning and deep learning like is very very it's not going to be something that people are desiring, it's going to be expected. So you cannot understand machine learning, artificial intelligence, unless you start from the basic building blocks of the internet as a marketer. So
Mm.
like what I see right now is that people that will not invest time in building data literacy, because the technical marketer does have data literacy. Like for me, that's like I've been thinking a lot about it in the couple of days I've been experimenting with different types of posts. But to use AI or to use all these tools and technologies that are coming up every day, you have to have data literacy. So to have data literacy in the in the internet age, you need to know how the internet works. The most basic thing, the most like the browser, like exactly as we were speaking earlier. You need to understand things like the browser. You need to understand a bit of JavaScript, a bit of SEO, a bit of everything, because otherwise it's very hard to stay competitive as a professional, in my opinion. Like I do feel the pressure, and I do know, like I think I know a lot of shit, but at the same time I feel the pressure under my ass right now to constantly like learn and improve myself. So like, for instance, what would you advise people that are digital marketers that maybe they don't think they're technical, but they are, probably because it's in the name, right? Or like
Mm.
analysts, like what would be your advice right now for how they should invest like in this, in their career, to stay competitive and just like constantly be able to keep up.
Um, well, so let me insert my own feedback to some of that. So, like, I agree with you that it's if you want to like stand out, and if you want to be competitive in this industry, then yes, you need to have kind of an insatiable curiosity towards all the new stuff, because that's what people are going to be talking about. And to understand the new stuff, you need to have a good grasp of the old stuff, because it's all turtles. It's all turtles, one on top of each other. I don't think that everybody needs that to work functional, to be functional in this industry, or even to thrive in this industry. I think that there's always, like, it's such a huge industry and there are so many companies, and uh, you know you don't have to chase the shiny things just to land a job. You just have to be really good at what you do, and just industrious. And I don't want people to stress out about, if you haven't been reading, the Wolf from Alpha paper on generative AI or anything. Like, you're not falling off the train. You're still fine, and you don't have to stress about this stuff. You can take it at stride. But then there's the subset of people who really want to stand out and maybe be noticed, and have like proactively be noticed by others, so that you don't have to like even push yourself, but you'll be noticed. Hey, that guy knows what, or she knows what she's talking about. For that group of people, you need that. So I would like, I I'm a Luddite at heart. Like, I love looking at the new stuff, but I've been a firm believer that a strong foundation is like key to everything, absolutely everything. Like, it doesn't have necessarily have to do with data literacy. It just has to do with understanding what are the building blocks of whatever discipline you're interested in, and there's always going to be a lot of literature what those building blocks are,
Yeah,
and then learning the terminology and the concepts of those building blocks. Like, you have to have that in place. You're not going to be able to work with data engineering or cloud engineering until you understand the collection mechanism. You're not going to be able to work with the collection mechanism until you understand how the browser works. You're not going to be able to understand how the browser works until you understand something about networks and
exactly. Yeah,
JavaScript and APIs. So it all kind of ties in together, and you can start anywhere. Like, if if you've never done a single technical thing in your life, you could still take a look at like GPTs and build your own little, you know, little assistant tool, feed it information, and have it, build a model out of that. That's fine. But at some point, you're going to have to start walking backwards step by step, so that otherwise you're going to go into those companies and clients and boardrooms or whatever, and you're just going to make a fool out of yourself by talking about things, and then somebody asks you a probing question and you won't be able to answer it, because that's when the card, like the house of cards, comes tearing down. Unless you're
yeah,
really, really good at talking. Like, some consultants can bullshit their way, and it's just, we really, like, we live in all these different bubbles, and
yeah,
sometimes it's okay to play the game. Like, that's absolutely fine. And some people do a really great job at it. They're really great at, talking about this stuff and selling this stuff and even doing this stuff without understanding how any of that works. But that's a separate kind
yeah,
of skill that requires some innate talent. But for the rest of
for
us who
sure.
don't have that, or who don't want to play that game, or who don't want to contribute to those bubbles, you just have to start working your way backwards from whatever technology interests you and try to find the building blocks. Like, it doesn't mean that you have to start learning like assembler or machine languages. That's not necessary. That's too far back. You have to know when to stop looking at
Exactly. Or
code.
Fox Pro.
Yeah. Yeah, even though there's such a good book, like, for anybody who's interested in knowing how a computer works. It's called Code, and we'll add a link. Like, it's one of the best books I have read, and it starts with
Oh,
like, these are ones and
Pascal.
zeros. Yeah, it just starts with ones and zeros, and then it starts building upwards. It builds a basic. It explains Morse code, how that's related to binary. Then it goes into like building these machines. Anyway, it's a beautiful book, and we'll add that
Let's
into the
link
notes
it.
because it's
Yeah.
so good. That's a Christmas gift idea for your friendly technical marketer. It's such a good book.
I
Anyway,
need to read
totally off
it.
the rails. It's
No,
really
but
good.
I think you're right. I think this is like something that I relate to a lot. Like, you don't have to put AI in your headline on LinkedIn to be competitive, but foundation. Like, this is so important, and just by knowing how things, like where it started and why are they here, this is like the competitive advantage of having the base. And as you said, sure, I was, when I was saying data literacy, I was thinking about specifically our field, but all any field that you are in and you're listening this to is so important to understand how that shit came together and how it works. So yeah, I hope that maybe in the next season of Standard Deviation Podcast we can actually take a lot of these topics and break them down, and just going into deep about, like, what are the building blocks of digital marketing and the internet. So very excited about that. And I know now we're gonna have to invite our guest Simo, but I have the almost perfect, as you said, it's not perfect, the perfect one for the very festive song for you. There you go. Let's go. It has a very long build up. I should have thought of that. But I just want this guitar. Just the simmer ad is coming. Simmer.
The sound quality is just amazing. This is how low fi we are. We need to get our act together next season. Get Josh Silverbauer to handle our AV for us.
Okay, that's it. Merry Christmas, everyone, from Team
Merry
Simmer.
Christmas from Simmer as well. Yes, yes, we're a technical marketing online course platform, and use the code DEVIATE. That's DEVIATE to get 10% off your course purchases at teamsimmer.com. So check it out.
Merry
That's
Christmas,
it.
and let's invite
Yeah, Merry
Santa.
Christmas. Big applause. Hey Charles, how
Santa
are
is
you?
here.
If that is your real name.
I'm terrified that you have a soundboard, but I'm
I
doing well.
do. I should not be allowed to have one.
we both
There's
have.
actually eight. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
We both have soundboards. We're
We're
dangerous.
so advanced with this stuff.
So, Charles, welcome. This is the last episode of the second season of Standard Deviation Podcast. We decided to end this amazing season with you. A lot of episodes, a lot of shit happened this year in digital analytics. So, we thought, who is the best person to end this crazy year with? And that was you. And I've been festive now for the beginning of the episode. So, for anyone listening, I'm unplugging my lights, the police car lights that Simon made fun of me. And we're happy to welcome you. How are you feeling? How are you doing lately?
I'm feeling good. As you said, there's no shortage of new stuff going on, so I've been keeping busy. I've actually lately been doing a lot more on the Adobe side than the Google, which has been a bit of a nice refresh for me, and
Mhm.
also fun to explore some new stuff I've never really done before. Um, but yeah,
So is it like when you take a break from a relationship to see the relationship with new eyes, with newfound respect? Do you have that with Adobe and GA that you've now you spent time with Adobe and now you just can't wait to get back to Google Analytics?
um,
You don't have to be politically correct about it, by the way.
I
I
needed to
will.
take, I think I needed to take a break from GA4 for a little bit, and I'm not yet ready to return and go all in.
Why not?
Um, I think I think for me the struggle is I mostly focus on working with like enterprise and more kind of mature clients. And GA4, it's been an amazing year with new features and updates and all that, but it still feels like it's not yet close
Mm,
to what the finished kind of final polished version looks like.
yep.
And that's where a lot of the conversations and clients and needs I have, it's constantly about workarounds or using BigQuery or trying to solve all these gaps in different ways. And what I think has really been interesting for me to balance that with is a lot of people don't realize Adobe's actually released the next version of Adobe Analytics. And when I compare and contrast the two of them, they really couldn't be any different from each other and the directions they're going. And that's where, at least right now, I'm having a lot of fun on the Adobe side, and a lot of it kind of feels like it's bringing back some of what I fell in love with like 10 years ago, as I started with Universal Analytics. So I still think like on the GA4 side that can all happen, but I just
Yep.
don't know when, and I'm just waiting.
Yeah. Well, that makes a lot of sense. Do you think so when you've been working with Adobe, was it a conscious decision to broaden your horizons in the eventuality that GA4 isn't necessarily the one thing to bet on in the future? Because we've been saying this to our clients when the UA sunset was in the horizon. We've been saying that shop around, make sure you're not putting all your eggs in one basket, make sure you know what the playing field is like. But
Yeah.
I wonder if practitioners are doing the same thing, because I'm happy to say to clients that look around, but I haven't done that too much myself.
Yeah.
Maybe I should have.
I, I mean, we were pretty much forced to, and certain enterprise customers are. So I'll just give like one example. Originally, when the deprecation timeline was announced, everyone obviously had to start moving GA4 and preparing for that first kind of deprecation wave. And one of the major limitations that still actually exists today is the measurement protocol is not like
Mm,
fully complete and being able to be standalone. So that actually presents some significant gaps and challenges with tracking like connected TV on Roku's, Xboxes, and other sorts of devices because you miss all the geographic native device and a bunch of other stuff. So basically, what you're kind of challenged with is if you can't actually dual tag or implement in the same way, you have to think of other options. So I actually have had a large portfolio of like entertainment and streaming video type clients. And those were some of the first that like started to actually look at real options. And that's where I started to kind of explore and ultimately kind of set on like customer journey analytics from Adobe as like my go-to kind of preferred solution for that. So to your question, It's really kind of stems from where those kind of needs and pain points are. And luckily, at some point, Google gave the 360 customers like an additional year to move over, but
Mm.
we're still kind of waiting for some of those features. And now the new date is kind of coming up. So
Yeah.
some challenges.
What do you think is going to happen on June 30th, 2024, which is the last day that we'll have access to any of that UA stuff?
So I think it's going to be really telling in the beginning of next year. So from my perspective, I still think a lot of enterprise customers are actually still using Universal as their
Mm.
data tool, and GA4 is still kind of implemented in many cases, but not being used day to day. So Google made some announcements actually, I think in the
Yeah.
last 30 days, where they're going to start removing some features from Universal, and it basically indicated that additional functionality might start to disappear between now and June. So as that happens, I think it's going to be really interesting to see how it plays out. My best guess is Google's going to get a lot of pressure to accelerate some of the items on the roadmap and release
Yeah.
new features. And I think we saw some of that kind of tailing off the deprecation of the free version of Universal, and it'll be hopefully on the 360 version when that happens. We'll start to get more of the enterprise kind of feature set and needs kind of baked in.
Yeah. Do you think it's going to be enough? Like, generally, do you think just adding features to 360 is going to be enough to convince people to move to it? Because it's still like an acceleration from 0 to 150K a year just to get some additional features.
So the nice part is on the 360 version, they changed the commercials. So there's actually a mid-market option now. So it's actually 50K starting point, not 150K. So that actually makes it a lot more accessible. Um, I mean, I just go back to how Universal kind of evolved over time. And if anyone remembers or has used the products for a very long time, there used to be a period of time when you would log in and literally like there'd be substantial changes all the time. Like in the middle of your trainings or your workshops, you'd have a new UI or a new feature show up. And there's a little bit of that in GA4, but I don't think we're quite at a place yet where the UI is starting to undergo some kind of massive changes and updates. And just from a user experience, that's where I think some of the major pain points are. Like I still have a laundry list of features that I would like that I think are fairly basic to just do
Yeah.
basic analysis, like
Yeah.
percentage of total or plot rows. And a lot of that's still not there today. So that's where I think it's still a few years from like starting to really
Mm.
feel as polished as Universal was for being able to do those kind of day-to-day analysis flows easily without having to rely on Looker Studio or BigQuery or going to some other place to do that kind of workflow.
Yeah. And
But I
and
think a lot of
ironically, like
sorry. Go,
just
go,
one
go.
last thought in this,
Go,
like
go, go.
ironically, the idea of like incremental updates, like small little things, they're the ones that break your BigQuery schema, because it's new columns, new stuff added to those. So like I remember that, well, like with Universal Analytics, I think when they did add a lot of stuff, but I think it was always like a net positive to get those features. Always like, wow, what's the next cool thing they did? Whereas with GA4, many of the features they add are like, okay, we're approaching like baseline. Just add a couple of more features like that.
And it still feels like a lot of it is replicating what is in Universal.
Yeah.
And it's not about like new innovative things that
No.
are different than what we've ever had before. So like I think the last release was scheduled emails. Okay, like great. Like I don't know. So
Yeah.
that I agree with you 100% for sure.
Yeah.
And I think it's something that not only you did, like a lot of, not even because you said, like you're working with enterprise, but I also see like small, medium-sized businesses that just got fed up with this whole forced adoption that happening, and not only having to learn a new tool, you have to learn like two tools, because you also need to learn BigQuery and you need to learn SQL to properly use GA4, because you cannot use it without. So we see in the market right now, like never before, like another cool thing that happened this year is that the market became more open for other alternative tools. So
Yeah.
we have, the Adobes, we have the PV Pros, we have the Amplitudes, we have all these other tools that came up. So, and you see people is like a very big, like how everyone was in the UA community before, and everyone was loving UA and sharing flowers and patting each other's on the back. I think a good thing that happened is like the democratization in the community of different tools and access to different tools. But also, like all these people that create new tools come with different knowledge and different, like, inputs. So, what do you guys think about that? Like, that's a big shift that happened this year.
Well, I mean, it would be a disservice to these vendors to say that they only now just popped up. I mean, they've been
Yeah,
around for
but
a
it's the
while,
truth.
but I like so Charles already alluded to how GA4 is still trying to replicate UA. And I think that they're not the only vendor out there just trying
For
to do
sure.
that. Like there's now a big hole the size of universal analytics in the market, and GA4 isn't doing a good job in patching that. So I think that there are many vendors who used to be product analytics tools, for example, and are trying to solve the marketing analytics problem as well. Amplitude comes to mind first and foremost.
Yeah.
So I think there's like there's a movement to fill that gap. I don't. It's at the same time, it's cool that we have more options. At the same time, it's kind of discouraging that this is like the level of innovation. Universal
Yeah, for
analytics,
sure.
when you're
Yeah.
looking at it in the hindsight, it's not a good tool. Like it's outdated. It had so many problems relying on a data model that was so ancient, and immutable. So I would have liked to see that this vacuum that comes from lack of a proper Google Analytics tool would lead to like crazy new stuff and new paradigms being explored. But it just seems to be like same old, same old.
So this is where I get excited, because this is where I started. I started looking at Amplitude, I started looking at PWix, and that's exactly what I experienced. Like all of them and all their marketing material, it's all about why we're better than GA. And I would encourage everyone to really take a look at what Adobe's doing, because what CJA basically is, in a nutshell, is Adobe took everything that was special, or that people loved and bragged about Adobe Analytics, its power, its customization, its flexibility, and they basically opened up the back end. So on the Google side, we say we have this new event-driven data model, right? And it makes everything better. Well, it does and it doesn't. It's actually not really that flexible. We still have lots of
Mm,
limitations. We can't do arrays. We have to still follow
yeah.
largely how Google names things. On the Adobe side, there used to be EVARs, SProps, all this complicated stuff. But basically, long story short, you can use whatever schema you want. You can come up with arrays, schemas, name things however you want. In fact, one of the use cases that I kind of go through is you can actually stick Adobe Launch on top of the Google Tag Manager data layer, ingest it, and then send all that into CJA and basically run it on a Google data layer. You could
Nice.
you couldn't really patch the inverse in a very logical, like, easy way. And then in addition, like the tool itself, like Adobe and Google's never really had a capability to replay data, or batch upload data, or even stitch like historical user level data to a common ID. It's always, to your point, Simo, that's been like one of the worst parts of Universal. Like it didn't really do
Mm,
any sort of stitching. So anyways, in the CJA world, like that's the basic functionality. You can batch, you can upload, you can adapt it to any schema. And then in addition, like all the kind of core features in it are fully retroactive. So that's where I feel a lot of that, what made Universal special. Not only can I create views or profiles, what they call report suites, that are fully retroactive, but I could even create dimensions that are fully retroactive. So if I want to reclassify my page URLs, I have this derived field where I can do that on the fly. So for anyone that's experienced exactly what you're sharing, where everything's kind of this flavor of a universal alternative, I like what Adobe's doing, and I hope that pushes everyone forward, because one of the prime mottos or product points that they're centering around is being able to do analysis without having to do SQL to solve everything. And that's what I like about it. I don't necessarily know if I align or believe that every marketer needs or should go learn SQL. Like I don't know SQL. I've gotten this far in my career. I feel like I was able to do some powerful and meaningful analysis with what I had in Universal, and I've been looking and yearning for something more. I've also been wondering when I should learn SQL. But for now, at the very least, that's where I'm kind of having a lot of fun with this, because it's giving me a lot of what I feel like I had on the Google side, and I'm waiting for within GA4.
You should still learn SQL, man.
Yeah.
Do it next year.
Do it.
I just gotta sign up for the course, and
You
then
do.
I'm good to go. I'm waiting for the Black Friday special.
Yeah, it's just double price for you, but that's doable. And we're gonna cut all that Adobe stuff out because we're a Google positive podcast.
Are we? Yes, we are. Yes, for everyone listening, yes,
No, we're
we
not
are.
gonna. That sounded really interesting, actually. That really did.
And that's
Especially the
other
dimension thing.
I mean, just real quick, that's the other thing is none of this has to be Google versus Adobe. That's the best part about this. I think historically it was always you had to use Google or Adobe and it was competitive. But in this new paradigm that like Adobe's working on, it can very much be complementary. You can
Mhm.
keep GA4. One of the biggest reasons people had to use Adobe in the past was GA actually kicked them off the platform. If you were an enterprise and you had too much data, you violated the
Yeah.
terms of service and they would actually remove you from the platform and force you to an alternative solution. There's still tons of intrinsic value and there seemingly will always be in GA4. We have the ads connectors. There's a whole shift to all Google Media, right? That's one of the big strengths of that platform. So in this new paradigm, like you could just dual implement. You can even run CJA again on top of GA4. You
Yeah.
could feed that BigQuery data. Like that's the thing. It can connect to Azure, BigQuery, Snowflake. So one of those use cases is just sit CJA top of your GA4 BigQuery feed. And now we have content attribution and all these out of the box features that we don't have within GA4 natively. Plus, you still have that GA4 implementation for anyone on your team that prefers or needs it or wants it. So that's the other thing that I'm hoping kind of changes in the next year is we get out of it using this platform or this platform. I think with the flexibility Google offers, there's always this hybrid option of it's additive, right? It doesn't have to be
Yeah.
one or the other.
But I think that would be a trend I wouldn't mind seeing more of, like having something that sits on top of your data warehouse, like an analysis layer on top of that, because that would be like a no-brainer. Everybody's already collecting that data, and you have that with Power BI and Tableau to a certain extent.
And that's where, like, when I explain like this customer journey analytics, like if I frame it versus the Google world, it's kind of like if Looker Studio and GA4 merged into this new entity, or even take some concepts of like server side and client side GTM and then start to mix that in. So within this, right, we have all this kind of powerful data visualization and reporting capabilities. And then the solution, it doesn't require any SDKs. We don't have to use a client-side tag. It can sit directly on top of any of the data warehouses that you're talking to, Simo, and run it. So all these things you're asking for, like that's the direction kind of Adobe's pushing. So historically, like if we just go back to where we kind of started, back in like the days of Universal being special, a lot of those features that I remember that would come out were like competitive features to what Adobe had, like enhanced e-commerce, product level custom dimensions, right? Even the measurement protocol, I feel like was a combination of that. So hopefully, what will happen is again maybe Google and Adobe will start getting competitive with each other, which results in both products like starting to kind of improve, and not just them, but all the other platforms as well. And it can stop being about like this universal competition, but more what is this new next generation kind of platform really should be.
But do you think that the future of this, or do you want the future to be like a patch meal of different stacks rather than just a single vendor lock-in? Because I think that's what you're describing. Like in the past, if you wanted to do Adobe, you had to buy into the whole stack. If you wanted to do Google, you had to buy into the whole stack.
Yeah.
But now you're describing how you could, like microservice analytics in a way that you have a pipeline and then you have different layers on top that might come from different vendors.
Yeah.
Which isn't unheard of in the data warehousing world at all. But I think that it's now leaking into this turnkey web analytics, online analytics world as well.
I mean, I feel like there's always going to be this drive for the stack and the platform, and we're going to continue to see mergers and acquisitions. And I think on the cloud side, we'll start seeing, like we're already seeing it. Like Looker got acquired by Google. Tableau got acquired by Salesforce. Salesforce has a partnership, I think, largely with Google Cloud. Adobe has a partnership with Azure or Microsoft. So you're starting to see these different kind of combinations player. But the reality is, like, we also still have these walled gardens, and they're
Mm.
walled for a reason. So for me, I guess I just view it as there's always going to be this bifurcation and this need for multiple things. And everyone's needs and stacks are so different just based on verticals and use cases. And we always, I think, as consultants say, use what is best for your use cases. So I feel like it's always going to be a little bit of the patchwork, but there's always going to be this drive for centralization and different points to try and further everyone's own stack.
I
I
like
don't
a
know,
lot
how
what
do
you
you feel
said
like any
with
of that changes? Go ahead.
no, I said that I really like what you said earlier, like basically forcing all these vendors to think about what is actually the future of web analytics. Like how does it look like? Because everyone is talking about the future of analytics. So how do you guys think? Because it's December and we're thinking about 2024, like how do you guys see things going in 2024? Like what's the future of analytics looking like for you guys from a practitioner perspective, but also like from an industry perspective? I feel like I'm interviewing both of you. This is fun. I like this. Let's go.
Go ahead, Simo.
No, it's your turn.
All right. So for 2024, like, what do we see happening? I don't. I wonder if it'll actually be that much different from 2023. And the reason I kind of share that is there's still this whole level of uncertainty
Mm.
around what the final result of the different sandbox, I guess, that we're going to be playing in. So we still have the third-party cookie deprecation, and I was just reading there was rumors last week that it might be punted again. But on the flip side, there's lots of things happening that indicate like this time might be for real and they're actually going away. But within that, like I'm seeing, especially within our agency business or our media side of our business, there's lots of questions around how these new attribution APIs and the new privacy sandbox Chrome has is going to play, and what's going to happen with other browsers that don't follow this. So that's where I think from just going back to like basic marketing use cases, if we layer that in with increasing like legislation and privacy, and the rate of change with kind of the browsers of technology starting to kind of change how we fundamentally do things, I still think we're building towards like what this new future actually is and what the capability set and how everything's going to play out. So I feel like with that, it's still very much going to be reactionary to many events that happen. And I don't yet feel that like the entire industry has like a plan or a direction or like a gold standard to where we're all headed. I wish we could, because I think if we all take a step back, like ethically, and think about consent and doing what's right and putting the ethics behind it, you can start to kind of curate that. But at least from what I'm seeing, like there's just not a lot of proactivity on that.
Mm.
That's what I would say.
Yeah. I
Your
my
turn.
sentiments. You echo my sentiments exactly. I like to add to that. I think that there's so many diversions being thrown around, like red herrings. I think the privacy sandbox is a good example how badly people are misinterpreting it and what its impact is on whatever we're working on.
I still don't know
Like
what it means to this day.
but you still see like people talking about a cookieless future, and every time that happens, I feel like my scalp is coming off because I have no more hair left to spare. So it's I
So,
like which it's just slowing us down. Like all trying to figure out these technicalities that have absolutely nothing to do with our day to day work is just slowing us down. So we kind of one thing that I've been really hoping to see with like the generative AI revolution is people learning to ask questions again and learning to ask the right questions about that. And I hope that happens, but I'm not sure if it does. I think that's more like an overall judgment over an industry rather than just about analytics. But I would kind of hope to see an increasing criticism, but I don't know if that's going to happen.
I mean, you bring up such a good point, and this is where I'm starting to see like I think some of the dominoes come together. So, Campaign Manager actually had some really interesting release notes, and there's also some ADH updates where effectively, like in Ads Data Hub, Google had a table of YouTube, DV360, like all the different Google products merged against an ID. You could query against these tables. In 2024, they're going to start to separate these tables and limit your ability to kind of query against. But they're only doing that in the EU, not the US. And then additionally, like within Campaign Manager, they're actually removing the basically all the path to conversion and multi-channel funnel reports from the product.
Mm.
We've already seen some of that start to go away from GA4. They just took away all the attribution models, and now we just have DDA. So going back to this privacy sandbox, like uh, a marketer, they'll show up and say, "What do we need?" Well, we need to measure the effectiveness of display. Well, in the old world, like the only way to really do that is you have to look at view through conversions. Like if you're not accounting for view through or assisted conversions, like you're not able to measure display effectively. So once that third party cookie goes away, how do you measure an impression that leads to an outcome? And that's where, like, in that privacy sandbox proposal is this attribution API. But the mystery of it is like Google saying, like, just use this privacy sandbox. Well, at the end of the day, like Google has to use it themselves too, and somehow represent that within products like GA and Campaign Manager. And at least I don't really know necessarily how like all that's gonna play out quite yet, right? And that's where I feel like the article I was reading like last week about that uncertainty around the privacy
Yeah.
sandbox and how this is going to work is why people are theorizing that the cookie delay might be punted once more. But I guess once more, how many times have we said that so far?
It's been way too long.
But
It's
anyway,
yeah. Every year they'll just say it's going to happen in 2 years' time.
In 2 years,
yeah.
exactly.
But like that simple example, like asking smart questions, like how do I measure display in 2024? I feel like there's not a lot of experts out there that are making it very easy to understand and curating that, and no one really knows. We're just kind of avoiding it or waiting to kind of see what happens.
Yeah.
I don't know if you all would agree or disagree with that sentiment, but like I feel like that's like a good type of question wrapped into the challenges that we're kind of talking about here.
No, for sure. And I also was thinking like what I see from clients, and I also work with enterprise clients, as you know, is that they see and feel all these changes that are happening in the industry, and they're becoming more hesitant to the value of having all these data points, and they don't really understand what data does for them. So, like, besides us being more focused on asking better questions, we also have to be more capable of properly communicating the value of data and the value of investing in all these technologies and tools, because they are seeing, like they just see all the stuff, like the actual end client, the CMO, or the owner. They don't understand all this stuff. For them, it's like, how do I use this to make better decisions? Why do I spend 200,000 per year on this tool? What does it bring me? So it's like all of us, I see, and in this specifically in the agency where I am, in the media and in the data team, I see that people actually want to know, how is this going to translate into revenue? So like they're asking more and more of that question. So like we need to be ready to answer those questions as analysts, as measurement marketers, as technical marketers. So I think all of these things that happen in 2023 with privacy, with J4, with UA, with Optimize, it just shows how unclear and uncertain things are for the digital analytics, in the future. So like I think one thing that I see is that we need to invest, and me and Simon were talking about this a bit in the beginning, in the foundations, like actually understanding the foundations and transform our clients into like geniuses. Somebody said this in that Measure Summit. I really like this, but like actually helping them and educating them to understand, like, yeah, like I know it's very weird right now, but we're there for you. And this is like, the end goal. I don't know if you guys agree, because I'm more like on the business side of stuff, but I do see this from clients, like the people that actually pay money for stuff. They just wonder, like, what's this value to me? Like, how is this
But
translated to revenue?
yeah, but don't underestimate the capability for self-deception that that companies and especially the C-level has. Like it's let's stick our head in the sand. So if we feel like things are moving fast, which like technically they're moving fast, but in like internet time they're moving glacially slow. But I don't think that that's going to reverberate with the average company running digital ads or doing digital marketing. I like they're working still this stuff out for the next 2-3 years. And I don't think that, GDPR has been in force for 6 years now, and there are still companies who are on like, step zero with that, like trying to be compliant. So I'm not. It's always exciting to think that maybe next year, and maybe with these current innovations that we have, that we're going to see a shift, that our industry will start bursting some of those bubbles and become smarter about what we do. But I'm just way too cynical to actually believe in that ever
To
happening.
that point, like I just had a call last week about someone trying to do a GDPR workaround. Like it's
Yeah,
exhausting. Like
yeah,
I still can't believe we're still having these conversations where
yeah,
we have to just embrace that it's different now and it's always going to be. And if you don't do this, like now there's actually punitive and reputational like damage as a
yeah,
result. And the other part, which I was just thinking about as you were kind of sharing, was like the other part is I think we can also get a flavor of where things are headed. So essentially everything's is going to be modeled or heavily modeled. So you can already see that within a lot of what Meta and Google's doing, like within the platform. So like a lot of people don't realize like conversions in the product are modeled by default when you use the DDA. It's not like it's just a deterministic model. There's not only the model itself, but then there's like conversion lift and other sort of stuff going in there to try and restore and make things as
yeah,
much as they were in the past. And we have the consent mode or behavioral modeling feature in GA4. And we're just going to continue to see more and more of that. And I think the importance there is like, you still need something else to like check. Like, I don't
yeah,
think it's a good idea to go all in and say, oh, we're just going to rely on Facebook and Google's kind of representation of it. You still need your own kind of way of doing and understanding things. And in addition, I also feel like we're always going to have data sets that kind of and use cases that are outside of anything to do with advertising. So
mm,
product might be a perfect example, right? You have a logged in type of experience and you simply want to improve that experience to users, figure out what content, what journeys, like what do you need to do to kind of make a better product. And with that, like having model data and all this other stuff doesn't really seem to apply or it's not needed. So you have these like different kind of bifurcations, and that's where kind of going back to like how is this all going to play out like next year? Are we done or are we
yeah,
ready? Like I don't feel like any of this is really settled.
yeah.
Well, Charles, so are we gonna see from you in the next year more Adobe journey, customer journey content? Are you gonna help us, get the gist of it? Because I do think I know there's a lot of people that are like in the Adobe community. I'm thinking about Jen, and she always speaks about Adobe, and Frederick, I think,
Yeah,
also
Frederick.
like I can think about the two of them, but I don't see it like I don't see Adobe as being accessible to everyone. Like there's
Yeah,
not.
it's an enterprise. It's the most expensive, right? So
Yeah,
that's where like my hope beyond hopes is like there was this place where everything played well like a few years ago, right? You
yeah.
had you had Google, and Google I think did an amazing job at actually eroding a lot of business from Adobe. Like I have never had more fun in my entire life than the explosion of GA360. I mean, being there, being able to sell it, like pitching against Adobe, like that was so fun. But anyways, like playing forward, like Adobe's still relatively expensive, and an SMB likely
Yeah,
can't really justify that. So we still need something else, and that's where like I'm actually hoping more so maybe that like the amplitudes and the PWIX and some of these other solutions will stop like I guess obsessing about everything within Google and start thinking about again just what makes most sense for everyone. And at the same time, I hope some of this pushes Google
Yeah.
even more aggressively. Like that idea you had, Simo, of wouldn't it be cool if we could just stick something on top of BigQuery or a
yeah,
Google Cloud Storage bucket? Like, what if we actually took SGTM and started to make some of this happen? Or I'm confused by Looker Studio versus Looker. Like, what if some of this started
Yeah.
to come together and there was a more native, like GA Looker type story? Like, you could basically have some exciting stuff. And the other part is like this whole conversation about CDPs. Like, there's this CDP recipe that we've all been doing, the consumable CDP that we build on top of GCP, the new buzzword. But what if that was more accessible or native, right? Like, there's all this cool stuff that just seems like it's right there, but it's not at the same time. So that's anyways, to your question, I definitely took a little bit of a pause on my
We miss you.
Google content buzz, doing more on Adobe, but I can't stay away from Google. But we'll see. It's probably going to be more Adobe for a little bit.
But you won't have time to write anything because you're taking all these SQL courses and everything on Simmer. So
that's true. Once I get that Black Friday where I pay twice as much.
Yeah. Special deal just for you, my
You
friend.
should make it so there's a scale where the closer it gets to the end, the more you pay. I like to see how
Ooh, that sounds really
That's
good.
actually cool.
This is digital sales advice from the one and only Charles Farina. We're going to do that.
Everyone who buys one, it makes the next one more expensive.
Yeah, so you have to be an early adopter.
Yes.
That's
I
really
like
good
that.
advice.
I'm gonna steal that too for specific things. Well, Charles, thank you so much for coming. This is this was a great chat. I'm happy that we finished this season with you. And for everyone listening right now, if you want to connect with Charles, you can find him on LinkedIn, on Twitter. And I hope he will get back there and, bless us with his content. Because I messaged you, like, I really miss you online. Like, I loved your content. I'm sorry, Timo. But I really, I really like Charles' content. So I hope you can...
It's a zero-sum game. Like, if you read Charles, you won't be reading my stuff anymore.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
I guess so. As we talked in the intro, we might not do the podcast together next year.
Yeah, exactly. We were just saying that Charles might be the straw that broke the camel's back. Like, this is the end of our story. You're such a contradictory figure. You're always like flaming stuff up.
Oh, I'm just a troublemaker.
You are. It was an absolute pleasure to have you. And we'll have you back. We'll have you back next season because there's going to be a next season. This wasn't such a disaster after all.
Next
Almost 10,000 downloads.
Next time we can talk about how I got kicked out of a Google conference once.
Oh, yeah.
That's an interesting one, which I don't know if I'm going to publish or not.
That was too controversial.
We could talk about all the places we've been kicked out of. That's going to be a good episode.
I like that.
Well, for everyone listening, we wish you happy holidays, whatever you're celebrating. Thank you for tuning this whole year with us, and we'll see you next year.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.